All right, so we're back with my good friend Evangelos Simoudis. His blog is at corporateinnovation.co. We're recording this on the morning of March 6, 2026. Episode notes will be on the dataexchange.media. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So I'm just going to jump in. So our topic today is AI and layoffs, and there's actually many facets to this topic. So the first one is this AI is AI really causing a lot of these layoffs? So we're going to skip that topic for now. The second other topic is how is AI changing the nature of work? We might cover that in more depth in the future podcasts, and but for today, we'll focus on what can knowledge workers do to make themselves more attractive to companies with the rise of AI. So, with that, the first set of advice that I will dispense, and hopefully Evangelos will either agree or push back on, are ways of working. So, in terms of ways of working, one thing you can do is learn to work with AI as a collaborator, uh, not just as a tool that is threatening you or something to resist. So the premise here is that the people who develop the skills to direct, validate, and experiment with AI will be more valuable than those who ignore or try to compete with AI or just on pure execution speed. And then the second thing that you can do is to shift away from just routine execution and shift yourself more towards problem definition. And Evangelos, I'm seeing this more, especially among developers, including myself, which is basically you used to write a lot of code, but now you're more into this kind of spec-driven development where you spend a lot of time really defining the thing you want to do, the libraries you want to use, and basically, sketching out the problem that you want to solve for the AI model. And finally, the last thing in this area is be an authority on complex edge cases. So the idea here is AI at this moment cannot handle everything. So the people who can handle those edge cases that AI cannot handle will be much more well positioned, at least for now. So I'll stop and we'll cover other categories. But what do you think, Evangelist? So these are new ways of working.
Let me add. Let me start first of all by saying, good to see you again in our monthly meeting here. And a lot of what I'm about to say in response to the kind of framework that you're starting to lay out is driven by the experience that we have through our corporate advisory work, which stems from two levels, stems from us advising corporations and us doing some development, some prototyping, either in advance of what the corporations will ask for or in response to what corporations are asking. Okay. So the first thing I would say is that we're starting to distinguish among three types of corporations. One is the digital natives, companies like Airbnb, Netflix, eBay, and these guys from the beginning, they embed AI into their business processes. And their employees are very much tuned into how to keep optimizing and how AI can help them on that. The second, which to me is the most interesting case, I will call it the incumbent innovators in a way. And these are companies that have been around for a while. Examples could be Walmart, JP Morgan Chase, Intuit. But they're starting to deliberately introduce AI into their business processes. And the third category are the traditionalists who tend to be late adopters or market laggards, if you want to use Moore's terminology. And those guys are, in my mind, today, they are just deluged by pilots without being able to make clear decisions. Now, when I look at the employees across those companies, I will start with the end because I think that's what your statement points to. I'm seeing a lot of people using AI tools instead of using search, as opposed to really experimenting with a breadth of tools that are around and starting to determine how to incorporate them into their daily workflow, to the business process that they are participating in. The second thing that is really important in these companies as an observation is that their AI efforts tend to be, I'm talking about the traditionalists, the laggards, they tend to be driven by employees as opposed to being deliberate from the corporation saying, here's what we want to do. Again, as I said, the digital natives, they have their iDNA and their employees have their iDNA. The last point, and I'll stop here and then we can go with more discussion, is I think that going forward, what we broadly call knowledge worker, it may not be unreasonable for them to think of, I won't call it gig work, but working for more than one company, right? And because I think that the right application of AI will have employment implications, but even if somebody embraces the direction and the advice that you're providing, which I think is very sound, I think that they may still find themselves needing to work in more than one company in order to make up a full employment. So I'll stop here.
Yeah. And I actually will talk about that as well towards the end. So the second kind of area that I want to kind of call out are what are some skills that you might want to build or be comfortable with. The first one is I think you should become more comfortable with a rapid experimentation. And by that I mean these AI tools, Evangelos, really allow you to build these prototypes quickly and to test ideas. So you definitely need to be comfortable with slightly more quick action away from I guess traditionally people may move more slowly and there's a lot more deliberation. But with this AI tools, maybe you can test several ideas all at once. So you just have to be comfortable yourself with the notion of experimentation, right? Secondly, and this is something that is happening already as in software development, just because the tools are much more mature there. But you will probably need to learn how to orchestrate several agents at once. I think this is actually learnable skill as programmers now are learning, right? So they have several Claude codes instances going, tackling a problem. And I think as these tools mature in other areas, and I'm about to release a newsletter after this podcast, a few weeks after this podcast goes out around, imagining what would agents look like in two domains, accounting and legal analysis, right? So these tools, while they're associated with software development, it's just that the software developers are the tip of the spear. So they're learning how to orchestrate multi-agent workflows. And then another thing that you might want to become comfortable with is verification, because AI right now is not perfect, right? So you want to be one of these people that is kind of adept at this core skill of verification, learning when to not delegate to AI, and learning how to spot where AI is weak. And then going back to something I covered earlier, invest in domain expertise, especially the ones that are, I guess, something that you can't just glean from a manual or a book, right? So something that derives from just experience and working with in your domain, or being able to spot subtle errors and guide AI. But there's still domain knowledge that cannot be captured and written down precisely. That's the kind of domain knowledge I'm talking about. So I'll stop here. So basically, in summation, get comfortable with experimentation. You might see yourself learning and being comfortable orchestrating multiple agents at once. Treat verification as an important skill, and invest in deep domain expertise, especially the type of domain expertise that cannot be written down in books or manuals. Right.
So I think you're making some very good points, which I believe are absolutely relevant to the software engineering audience that we have, particularly this notion of experimentation, this notion of managing multiple agents.
And like I said, it's mostly because the agent tools, especially, are mature there. But
Exactly.
but looking ahead, you may not be in software engineering. Similar agent tools make show up in your domain within the next 18 months, right?
So I again, just to broaden a little bit about what you're saying, and I think what has become very important, I have written about this. I wrote a piece or a couple of pieces defining a framework for levels of autonomy, as I call it. And I took some of my lessons from my work in the mobility industry and transferred them to more broadly AI. And again, one of the observations from constructing that framework, so people can read it on my blog, one of the observations was that we are shifting and starting to place a lot of importance to people who are systems thinkers. In other words, they do not think at the component level, but they're able to think at the system level. And I think what is important for this application,
it's similar to what I kind of alluded to earlier, which is get away from routine execution, right?
right? Yeah. So in a systems thinker, you are forced to understand the operation of an entire system or an entire business process. So if we move away from software engineering and say, how can we use those skills that we talked about more broadly, is people who routinely work in specific business processes like paying vendors, in a large corporation, or dealing with resumes in the HR organization, they really need to understand the entire process through which they are working. So today, their work may be on a small portion of an entire process, but I think as we move beyond just software engineering, everyone needs to become much more familiar with the business process where they're operating and understand where AI can play a role. In some instances, in some corporations, and what I call, as I said, the incumbent innovators, you will see a lot more design thinking from the top, right? People being able to articulate how AI can enhance the business process. But in corporations under this traditionalist, this laggard category that I mentioned earlier, it is the employee that is expected to introduce AI, and I think the employees that will differentiate themselves in these environments will be the ones who make an attempt to understand the entire process, and they are the ones through experimentation, as you said, through the reading. They are making they're introducing the right AI into the right step of that process, and determining what is the right step and determining what is the right AI does involve a lot of experimentation. And today we're finding ourselves at a point where it is very possible to do it. There are many tools that are starting to become available, and companies that are offering those tools are willing to give you free trials, right? So that you can determine how such a tool can be part of your process. So having that flexibility, but being able to think at a system level, and then, as you said, orchestrate tools as part of that business process and that system thinking creates a very unique skills. And we don't have, even in, I talk to a lot of our portfolio companies, which are all startups developing some type of an AI tool, AI application for the most part. We don't have a lot of systems thinker. We have a lot of people who may be experts in programming, who may be experts in using specific packages or developing models, but they're not very good at thinking at the systems level. And I think that will be a very big differentiator as we move forward.
Yeah. And, in general, your work is going to shift from actually producing work to directing systems, right?
Right.
And there is something to be said about someone who knows a business process from end to end. Like I said, this is where that hard to write down domain knowledge that, it just might be harder if you can't write it down, it's harder for an AI to do. Although there is this notion that I've heard people talk about, and it goes to this black box nature of the systems, which is we have this notion traditionally of human tacit knowledge, right? So it's knowledge that Evangelos may have just from years of experience advising companies, is just in his head. And people are speculating there's an emergent machine tacit knowledge, which is because these systems are black boxes. We don't quite know how it's arriving at some of these decisions.
Which is scary, by the way. I've recently listened to some interviews of people from AI labs, and their responses are very disconcerting, because it will appear to me that it's very easy for them to lose control of things. But that's a whole different story that is beyond today's scope.
So in terms of the skills to build, right? So this whole notion of getting comfortable with rapid experimentation, part of that is just the reality of what's happening, which is basically these routine tasks are getting compressed in terms of time, right? So what used to take you 8 hours is now 10 minutes. So clearly you're going to have to be comfortable experimenting and trying new things quickly, right?
The one thing to say, though, and I'm seeing it with two of my portfolio companies these days, is there's a fine point between trying to understand a new domain, for example, something around biotech, or something around logistics. It doesn't have to be, and pretending that you're an expert in this domain.
Right.
So what I have been advising these portfolio companies is, and actually the employees in their customer employees that they're working with, is find the people to partner with, right? So if you're in a corporation, find the expert with whom you can partner, where the expert can provide the deep domain knowledge, and you can bring in, as you said, the experimentation culture and the AI knowledge, because this kind of combinations, again, adding to that systems thinking that we talked earlier, but these kind of combinations will definitely be very important. And I don't think we will find them broadly. So people who are able to achieve them, I think will become extremely valuable assets for their organizations. Again, we're not asking people to go become experts in biotech or in agriculture or in logistics if they're coming from a different area. I mean, you cannot. We talk about upskilling and reskilling, but there are limits to how you can upskill or reskill an employee. The most successful areas is where you're starting to bring these competencies together in order to achieve, as a corporation, as an organization, the results that you're striving through AI.
So Evangelos mentioned earlier this notion of systems thinking, and I also mentioned earlier this notion of verification as a core skill, and I want to make sure that people understand what I mean by verification, because it's in many ways tied to this notion of systems thinking, which is basically the workers who are good at kind of telling AI what it's doing wrong or right are by definition going to be more valuable than the ones who are sloppier or maybe more prone to not catching errors in the AI system, because that's how you develop kind of this whole systems engineering practices. You know, each of these steps, you need kind of someone who can actually verify what's going well and what's going wrong, right?
Right. There is, I think that we are amazed on a daily basis of the capabilities that these systems, particularly generative AI systems, are exhibiting. But we need to understand to use them effectively. And you talk about experimentation is one way of using them effectively. Orchestrating multiple instances of them is another skill that for using them effectively. Making sure that you're not propagating hallucinations or other kinds of errors.
Yeah. So this verification is kind of like an attention to detail, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And attention to detail can come from, again, it's a skill. I mean, we have our own employees using 2 or 3 different these systems on the same problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And trying to establish what is going to be the ground truth here. Trying to establish for this particular domain, you know, if you're dealing with logistics or if you're dealing with ad tech, what is the combination of tools that give you the more answers or solutions that are verifiably relevant and verifiably correct. And that is something that is not, again, we've said this several times, that because of their eloquence, a lot of times, particularly for the less the less involved individuals who are using AI in much more of a it's not their job, but they're using it in a more on and off basis. They find harder to understand that the need for verification.
So this notion of systems thinking that you introduce, I think that's very much related to this thing that I'm trying to nail down, which is this notion of domain expertise that's hard to write down, right?
Right.
So if it's something that you can write down in a manual or book, then chances are an AI can do that well, right?
You need to verify it, but
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
I will agree with that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
will agree with that,
It's
right?
this kind of domain knowledge that just comes over time, where you know that this is an edge case, or this is this contract. This needs to be redlined in this contract, right? So,
Yeah, it's in some domains you can call them optimizations, heuristic optimizations, right?
yeah.
That are coming because of your experience in a domain. You know, for example, that you can string together A and B, even though no book says that you should do that, but you know that from your experience that you can do it, right? That type of that type of knowledge is something that, as you said, a lot of
Will
times
make
comes
you
from
very valuable. Yeah.
right, and a lot of times comes from experimentation and your willingness to say, well, let me try this and let me try it in 20 different environments. One of the things that we have been developing actually is a scenario analyzer for mobility situations. And where we found generative AI being particularly good, again, I'm coming to this experimentation point, is if I give you a scenario, what are the 20 other scenarios that are slight variations of the scenario that I gave you? And what are the answers that you can provide to each of these variations, so that if I take together the one that I gave you and the 20 that the system gave me, and I bring them together, can I create a better understanding of a particular problem or a particular context of a particular situation? And it took us a while to even accept that the tools can help us expand our horizon in a sense, right? Go from one scenario to 21, and then synthesize the 21 solutions, into something that is much more comprehensive and can help our clients address the problem that they wanted to address through the scenario that they gave us.
All right. So then the last part is basically a little more high level, positioning yourself for the labor market. So Evangelos alluded to one thing, which is you might need to get comfortable uh, holding multiple positions at once, right? So maybe your skill is such that you can help several companies simultaneously. The second thing, and this is maybe comes from me being much more financially conservative evangelist than most people, is I think just prepare for a little more instability in the job market, I think. So that might mean actually, honestly, building a larger cash buffer, preparing for more volatility and choppiness. Maybe there'll be more layoffs in your career compared to the careers of previous generations, right? So I think that also pay attention to how your output is captured and reused, right? So maybe pay closer attention to how are your contributions being captured and used, and maybe being used to improve a model. I'm not sure exactly what you're going to do with that, but understanding that, I think, is key to understanding how your career may play out, right? So if you think that what you're doing is slowly getting automated away, that's a signal right there for you to do something. And then this goes back to something we've talked about quite a bit in this conversation, which is basically Evangelos noted systems thinking. But another thing you can do is just build skills that compound with experience and not just repetition, right? So skills that include things like system level judgment, or customer intuition, or if you're a software engineer, debugging in very messy environments. So it's the kinds of skills that just comes with experience, that is very, very difficult for an AI to capture quickly. So anyway, so to summarize, prepare for more instability in the job market. So that might mean saving more. Pay attention to how your work is being used or maybe automated, and then build skills that compound with experience and not just repetition.
So a few years ago, I had given a speech at the European Union meeting about what will characterize the employees of the next few decades. And this was before generative AI burst into the scene, but it was after the Transformer paper came about. And I made 3 points that I wanted to make today in response to how you laid it out, Ben. The first one was that you really need to start thinking about employees as they enter their career, the mid-career, and towards the end of their career, because AI will have different impact on each of these 3 broad categories, and there are many subcategories within each of these broad categories. But let's stay at the higher level today. The second thing is that regardless of the category, what will define the successful people within each category is flexibility and adaptability. Flexibility talked a little bit about one way of being flexible is being able to deal with multiple assignments at the same time, right? I mean, you may work for 2 different companies, 20 hours for each, or 30 on one, 10 on the other. But that flexibility will be an important characteristic. So this notion of I work 40 hours a week every week, and I take X number of weeks on vacation, I think that will become a thing or could become a thing of the past. We're, as you said, we're in a intermediate stage right now where things are changing but have not settled yet. And the last thing that I would say is this is a great time to assess your entrepreneurial desires, right? In other words, a lot of people may want to be entrepreneurs, may want to start something on their own and become like their own boss, as we say, and they haven't explored that yet. I think that the period that we have entered because of AI and because of the impact that AI is having and will continue to have, people will start thinking about, well, do I need to be working for a large organization, government or corporation, or can I be an entrepreneur? Entrepreneur doesn't mean, by the way, that you're on your own, right? Kind of like in a sense, an Uber driver is an entrepreneur, right? Yeah. But it can be because you're teaming up with 3 or 4 other people towards a common goal. But this is a great time, I think, to examine whether you have the skill set and the stamina and the desire, right, to go and explore entrepreneurship, because I think it will become a very important differentiator as you think, whether you are in your particularly early in your career or middle of your career. So those were the 3 points that I made in that presentation, and I think they apply even more today than back when I made it, as I said, a few years ago.
So one more thing, as you were talking there, Evangelos, struck me, and I'd like to get your reaction to this, and I'm still kind of thinking this through, which is, if you think of the modern company, right? So modern company structure is kind of like I'm a low-level employee, I handle all of the routine tasks, and then if it's somewhat complicated or non-routine, it goes to an expert or another hierarchy and another hierarchy. It seems to me that and we might not be there yet in all cases, but it seems to me that AI will lead to flatter organizations, right? So in the following sense, right? So I mean, I don't need that next level of expertise because that's also handled by AI. You
Yeah.
know, so I guess I bring this up with the notion that besides being an entrepreneur, if you do decide to work for a large company, be prepared for a different hierarchical structure. It could be much flatter than what we're seeing today, right?
I think we will see two organizational changes as we move forward. The first one is we will see smaller teams, and it goes back to your point that you made early in today's conversation. As AI tools, applications become trusted co-workers, helpers, co-pilots, whatever term you want to use, the need for very large team will not be there, right? You'll have a much
Because each team member actually is managing a team of agents.
exactly.
Right.
That's the point of the orchestrator, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the second thing is that I think that, and we see this today in our firm, we see this today with this so-called incumbent innovator, what I keep calling incumbent innovators, which I really like as a group of companies. They are realizing that with a flatter organization that is much more, that has the characteristics that we talked about, experimentation, using systems thinking, using AI as a co-pilot, as a helper, with the smaller and flatter organizations, they can accomplish more. And as they are rethinking their business processes, either to enhance them with AI or to completely reimagine them with AI, the so-called AI first, a flatter organization achieves much more. So I mentioned companies like JP Morgan, companies like Walmart that fit in that group of incumbent innovators. We're seeing them moving in that direction, right? Moving to flatter organizations comprising of smaller teams. And I think that's an important transformation that the corporate world is starting to undertake right now.
So let's crystallize this last topic that we're talking about, which is this flatter organization. So in your mind, what does that mean for someone listening? So which does that mean? Avoid becoming a middle manager, obviously, right? So what else?
Well, I would say that every member of such a team, of such a group, needs to have a purpose. And the idea of, we have this paradigm, and many times we used to make fun of it, this shuffling paper, right?
Yeah.
Moving things. I think that type of a role in an organization will start being eliminated, right? You need to be able to say, here's my purpose, here's why I'm here, right? Here's the contribution that I'm making by using AI, and here's the result that my work with the help of AI is providing to the corporation. So you need to be able to give your contribution to the ROI of your organization, right? Because in this way, you're showing a reason for existence, what you're contributing, how you're helping the corporation, your organization. Maybe it's not a corporation, maybe it's government. How you're helping it advance, and I think that means, how you collaborate with your employees, how your employees, agents collaborate with your agents in order
By
to
the
make
way,
things bigger.
you also will need to learn how to use these tools. You can't. I don't think we will have people whose job is to manage people only and never use these tools, right?
Actually, I will tell you, after I'm programming these days a lot more in the way that you described. And it's not quite vibe coding. It's a lot deeper than that.
It's spec-driven development, right?
But I'm doing a lot more, and I'm having fun with it, by the way. But in our work, between managing and investing in startups, advising corporations, and developing IP, right? These are the three things that we do within Synapse. We're using multiple AI tools, and we're requiring every employee to use these multiple AI tools in order to stay within within our small company. And in fact, one of the questions that we're starting to get from corporations is, how do I change my culture? And it's particularly this incumbent innovators, how do I change my culture in order to change the DNA, to make my employees embrace AI a lot more than they are embracing it now? Because again, these corporations don't want to see employees say, oh yes, I'm using ChatGPT or I'm using whatever, Gemini on a daily basis to do searches. They want to say, here's how these AI tools enable me to do my, let's say, HR job or procurement job more effectively, right? And here's how I'm contributing to the corporation. And that's a big step.
So very quickly, I'll give you the final word. We talked a lot about a lot of things: domain expertise, verification skills, systems thinking. Unfortunately, Evangelos, a lot of these things assume that you already have some experience. So, what say you in closing, very briefly, to people who are trying to get that first job, that entry-level job?
Entry-level positions have become a tough and a sore spot right now.
But yeah. But give us some practical advice.
I would say that come in as an AI expert. Don't just play with AI. Do meaningful things with AI. And
and that might tie to one of your pieces of advice earlier, which is, how do you demonstrate that you're an AI expert? Well, because you were an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
you did side projects even when you were in school, right?
That's right.
So yeah. So and with that, thank you, Evangelos.